could sleep at night. Blew up for the 1,000th time. Guess I'm always lucky, right? Pop some shit, then fall behind. I jump the gun and take what's mine. Looking like you've seen a ghost.
Hello you guys, welcome back to Hella Spooky. This week's episode, we are talking about the infamous RMS, the Queen Mary. I talked about this many years ago, a few years ago, on my other podcast. Shameless plug, Caffeine and Crime. It is my true crime podcast, but I would kind of pause during spooky season and do like haunted and paranormal places. And since I do that here now on Hella Spooky, I thought I would bring some of those episodes over here. So that's what I'm doing today. And I'm excited to go back down memory lane for me with all of my notes on the Queen Mary, all of her history, glory days, her maiden voyage to her last sail, which actually took place on Halloween. It means we also have to talk about all of the ghost sightings and paranormal and haunting bits that go with the Queen Mary. First, let's get into our shout outs for today. A lip liner from Lucky Chick, the shade Sweetie. And then I have on Dew of the Gods hyaluronic lip butter on top of it for just a subtle glossy lip liner moment. And then I'm also wearing the Moon Slice Beauty blush. This is the shade Beautiful, and it is very beautiful. But on the eyes, you guys, I am doing a little almost like, I'm gonna have to change the lip up a little bit to like a red or something, but I'm doing kind of like a Delia Dietz cosplay moment today. So I had to break out my waiting room palette. But those are the shout outs. The waiting room palette from Milk Cosmetics is still incredible. I wish they would come back out with it. So if you are another lucky one that was able to snag this, it's so good. I just used a couple shadows from it today for this look, but it is a favorite. With that being said, let's talk about some ghost sightings on the Queen Mary. I definitely want to save a lot of the paranormal, gruesome bits for the episode segment, which I promise we're about to get to. In today's episode, I talk about stateroom B340 and about how this used to be 3 third-class passenger rooms that they, I believe in the 80s, I think I said the 80s, decided to take it under construction and make it into one giant suite, which turned into B340. There's a bunch of rumors behind this room, and we'll talk about it soon. It is known to be one of the most haunted places on this ship. And because of that, nowadays, when you go and stay in this room, not only are you staying in a pretty modern looking room for the Queen Mary aboard a ship, but you also are greeted with crystal ball, tarot cards, a Ouija board, and even your own Bloody Mary sayings and by the bathroom mirror if you want to perform the Bloody Mary act. But also throughout the room, there is signs or pictures that have ghost stories from what other passengers have experienced in the room B340. I thought I would share those little ghostly sightings with you now, just to give you a little bit of like a teaser or a taste of what we're about to dive into. One of them says, my family and I were up on the, I guess like deck area, like looking around, and I wandered off by myself into the chart room. There was only one other guest besides myself in the room, and he left right after I entered. As I was looking at the chart on the wall where they would lay out the maps trying to find the Queen Mary, I felt someone tug on the back of my shirt just above my left shoulder. When I turned to see if it was one of my family members, I felt a chill and realized that there was no one else in the chart room. I left the room immediately. This was the first time anything like this had ever happened to me. Another one says, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a person walking by. So I turned to look. It was a lady in a powdered blue dress. She was solid, but unfocused and hazy. She never looked at either of us. Then suddenly, she walked behind a thin pole, which we had a clear view of, and just disappeared. Ooh. Another. I was doing my rounds on the ship when I noticed that a normally secure room was unlocked. I guess this was from a staff member. I looked inside and saw a little girl standing in the room. She looked at me, stretched out her arms towards me, and then disappeared from the room. That's just to name a few. Oh my gosh, so many spooky tales from this ship, and I'm so excited to dive into today's episode with you. The RMS Queen Mary has had many lives. The ship made its maiden voyage in 1936 and carried many Hollywood celebrities. Clark Gable, Elizabeth Taylor, Audrey Hepburn, so many, and then it became a warship, troop ship in World War II, and even had a name change during that time. It then resumed its role as the Queen Mary, went on to have passengers for at least another 20 years. Now during 2020, with quarantine and COVID and all of that, the Queen Mary did unfortunately, like a lot of places, close down. But there was talk about it never being open again and closing down for good, and even the talk of demolishing it, which thankfully did not happen. I'm happy to say that she is back to being a working hotel. She is docked in California. Doesn't seem to be going anywhere, but it's believed to be very haunted and very spooky. We're gonna take it back just a little bit because you guys know I like to break down the history first, and then we'll get into all the spooky bits. I learned so much about the Queen Mary years ago whenever doing research for these notes in general that I'm still using to this day because thankfully I didn't erase them or get rid of them. There's so much information and so much to learn about the Queen Mary though, and how much this ship went through, how many miles traveled. It is literally insane. King George V actually had this to say about the Queen Mary. Today we come to the happy task of sending on her way the stateliest ship now in being. It has been the nation's will that she should be completed, and today we can send her forth no longer a number on the books, but a ship with a name in the world, alive with beauty, energy, and strength. May her life among great waters spread friendship among the nations. Queen Mary, her creation, her launch, was known to be extraordinary. From the time of her construction in 1930 in Clydebank, Scotland, she was designed to be great, but then the Great Depression hit and all construction was put to a halt. But it was soon picked back up again and carried on for her great launch, maiden voyage. But if you're like me, you probably were wondering why she was named the Queen Mary. This part was so funny to me back then, and honestly, it still is. I feel like there could have been a little bit of like shade here, a little bit of tea here. So the board of director at Cunard, which are the people that were, creating this boat, the ship, they decided to name it Queen Victoria, which was King George V's grandmother, because all the other past ships ended with an IA-2. So as per the protocol, they were like, Victoria is perfect. So the directorate of Cunard went to ask King George for his blessing, and they said, "We have decided to name our new ship after England's greatest queen," they're meaning his grandma, Queen Victoria, to where the king, King George V, says, "My wife, Queen Mary, will be delighted that you are naming a ship after her." It's just so funny. Oh my gosh. It could just be out of he just thought, like the current queen, you're saying that she's like the greatest queen, whatever. So honestly, it could be like shade from them, like saying that she's not the greatest queen, but it could also be him like shade towards his grandmother for that they were going to name it after. I don't know. I just found it really funny. So she in fact was named the Queen Mary. On May 27th, 1936, it was the big day, Queen Mary departed from Southampton, England, embarking on her maiden voyage. She had 5 dining areas, lounges, 2 cocktail bars, and swimming pools, a grand ballroom, a squash court, even a small hospital. She had set a new benchmark in transatlantic travel, which the rich and famous considered the only civilized way to travel. And she became so loved by everyone on both sides of the Atlantic, and still to this date. For 3 years after her main voyage of carrying passengers, she not only carried Hollywood celebrities and famous people like so, but she also carried royals. During that time, she also set a new speed record, which she held for 14 years. But when the Queen Mary docked in New York in September of 1939, that would be the last time she would carry regular passengers for many years. This is when World War II started and the Queen Mary's transformation into a troop ship had begun. Not only was she painted a camouflage gray color and stripped of her luxurious belongings, but she was also given a new name, the Gray Ghost, because of her stark color. Queen Mary was not only the largest but the fastest troop ship to sail. She was also capable of transporting as many as 16,000 troops. After the end of World War II, the Queen Mary began a 10-month retrofitting process, which would return the ship to her original glory, which she deserved. And on July 21st, 1947, the Queen Mary resumed regular passenger service across the Atlantic Ocean and continued to do so for nearly 2 more decades. As we know, all good things come to an end. And air travel really helped signal the end for the Queen Mary. It was an end of an era for her, and by 1965, the entire Cunard fleet was operating at a loss. They decided that it was time to retire and to sell the legendary Queen Mary. Getting a little spooky here because on October 31st, Halloween of 1967, the Queen Mary departed on her final cruise, arriving at Long Beach, California. Arriving in Long Beach, California on December 9th, 1967. She has called Southern California her home ever since. Now, are you guys ready for the juicy, spooky details? Internationally recognized, her historic floating hotel and museum attracts thousands of visitors every year. It's also attracted a number of unearthly guests over the years. In fact, some say the Queen Mary is one of the most haunted places in the world, with up to 150 known spirits lurking upon the ship. And if the history isn't enough to spook you, this article reads that there are 288 deaths that have been linked to the ship. Just during the World War II, 239 of those deaths were caused by the ship colliding with her escorting vessel. Of the 338 crew members, only 99 of them survived. And over the past 60 years, the Queen Mary has been the site of at least 49 reported deaths, not to mention having gone through the terrors of war. So it's no surprise that there are spirits from her vivid past that are still lurking in the rooms and in the hallways. One of these places, located 50 feet below water level, is the engine room on the Queen Mary. It is said to be the hotbed for paranormal activity. It's actually been used for filming in movies, all because of the infamous Door 13. This door crushed at least 2 men to death at different points during the ship's history. The most recent death was during a routine watertight door drill in 1966. It crushed an 18-year-old crew member, John Peter, and he was dressed in blue coveralls and sporting a beard. The young man has often been seen walking the length of the shaft alley before disappearing by door 13. 2 other popular hotbeds for paranormal activity is the first and second class swimming pools. Yes, there's 2 pools for 2 different classes. Though neither of them are used today as like an actual pool, which I actually think would be kind of cool. Can you imagine swimming in a haunted pool? But from photos and videos and things that I've seen, you can, I guess, get access to the pool area and walk around for like the ghost tours or whatever, or to explore. But you'll see that they kind of have like nasty, like murky water in them, or just no water at all, and it's just kind of like dingy looking. In the first class swimming pool, which has been closed for more than 3 decades, women have been seen often appearing in 1930s style swimsuits, wandering the decks near the pool. Others have heard the sound of splashing and have actually seen like wet footprints leading from the deck to the changing room. Some have also seen the spirit of a young girl clutching her teddy bear. Allegedly, the unfortunate girl drowned during the ship's sailing days. I guess she has just refused to move on, go into the light, as her voice as well as the sounds of her laughter have been captured here. So there's this author named Cher Garman. She is a paranormal investigator. She points out that there is no known drownings that have ever occurred on the Queen Mary, although she says Jackie is definitely there. In the Queen's Salon, which once served as the ship's first-class lounge, a beautiful young woman in an elegant white evening gown has often been seen dancing alone in the shadows of the corner of the room. More odd things have been made in the number of first-class staterooms. There's been reports of a tall, dark-haired man appearing in a 1930s style suit, as well as water turning on by itself and running, lights turning on in the middle of the night, phones ringing in the early morning hours with no one on the other end. In the third-class children's playroom, a baby's cry has often been heard, which is thought to be the infant boy who died shortly after his birth on the ship. Senior Second Officer William Eric Stark, who accidentally drank dry cleaning fluid instead of gin, has been seen. The cook who was baked alive by his own kitchen staff during World War II has been seen. I'm sorry, but if I was a cook and I was literally baked alive by my kitchen crew, I would haunt that shit too. Other phenomenons occurring throughout the ship are the sounds of distant knocks and doors slamming and high-pitched squeals and drastic temperature changes. The aromas of smells from the long past and all of those things combined will lead you to very eerie feelings. And some claim to have had conversations with these spirits, asking questions and leaving them with the option to knock once for yes, knock more for no, and having full-on conversations and recording them. These are a few of the many, many reports of seeing actual figures and strange noises and just unexplainable chills, and so many people having terrifying experiences here. But arguably, the most notorious location on the ship for paranormal activity is stateroom B340. Its paranormal occurrences stem from the horror events. And let me tell you, they're pretty rough. Featured on sci-fi channels, Ghost Hunters, and British TV series Most Haunted, room B340 offers thrill seekers and scare enthusiasts to the unique opportunity to spend the night in the alleged paranormal activity room at the Queen Mary. Stateroom B340 has a large volume of recorded paranormal activity with many stories of haunted encounters noted in the ship's logs. Reported date back to the final ocean voyage in 1967, there was complaints from guests saying that B340, there was someone knocking at the door in the middle of the night, and other complaints include bathroom lights turning on by themselves, the sink faucet turning on and off on its own, the unexplained bathroom doors shutting. Some guests have reported the cover of their bed being pulled off while asleep, and waking to see a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. Another one has seen a man's figure sitting in the chair across the room while they were in bed. Voyage years, the space actually was 3 third-class staterooms and has since been remodeled to become one large guest room suite. A perfect blend of authentic style and modern furniture, although you still get the olden day vibes when you stay in it. B340 is larger than the average cruise ship cabin, featuring operable portholes and offering all the modern conveniences of the contemporary hotel. The famously haunted stateroom offers a true ocean liner experience. In addition to the remodel of this room, B340, there is a chest with unique items available for guests to amplify their overnight haunt experience, including a Ouija board, tarot cards, and a crystal ball. Now, a lot of people seem to think that this stemmed from rumors that we will definitely get into in a second. They think that these rumors caused this to be infamously known as being haunted, and that the ship has ran with it ever since as a cash grab, but others who have stayed there have denied this and said the room is creepy as hell. So apparently, back in the 60s during one of the cruises before the ship's final docking at Long Beach, a man went psycho, brutally murdered 2 women. His crimes were discovered and he was locked in his 3rd class stateroom, either B222 or B224 or B226, which is now B340 as a whole, like combined. The door's locked and a guard was posted outside. A little while later, he started pounding on the door saying someone was in there with him trying to kill him. The guard ignored him, thinking it was a way for him to try to escape, and he's just like, no, I'm gonna wait for backup type of ordeal. And after a while, the passenger quieted down and the guard just thought like, okay, maybe he just went to sleep, he gave up. The next day, however, the ship arrived in New York. The crew summoned NYPD detectives and they went to apprehend this murderer and to, do the crime scene and everything. When they opened the door to the stateroom, they found the man had been ripped apart and his entrails and limbs spread all over this room. There was no way he could have done this to himself. And upon the next sailing, the paranormal reports started coming in from the stateroom. When it was docked in Long Beach in 1967, the 3 third-class staterooms were combined into the larger guest room, which is now B340. And the reports continued to roll in. By the 1980s, B340 was closed to booking because guests would just up and leave the room in the middle of the night. It became such a fuss and a mess that they didn't want to really mess with it anymore or keep it open. They closed it off completely. Like there was no visits, no guests, nothing. Over the years, there's been a lot of variations of a story of a man who offed his family in the cabin. There's another story about a woman who offed her husband. There is the telling of a husband who offed a wife, that there was a lone passenger who had a cutthroat situation going on, if you will. The list. And honestly, it goes on and on and on. I've seen and I've heard so many different stories about this room, but nobody can actually trace back exactly what happened. And the ship records show nothing actually happened in any of those rooms. So is it a cash grab? Did anything really happen? Or were they so violent and so vile at the time that the ship just tried to cover them all up? I like to think it's not a cash grab. Could it have been a cover up at the time? Maybe, because why would they shut off that entire area and not allow visitors to come anymore? And it's almost like they wanted nothing to do with it at the time, but new ownership is a little bit okay with it now because they're all about the paranormal investigators. And that's honestly where they're probably making the most of their money, is people who are coming to stay at the Queen Mary for the paranormal activity elements and haunting elements. So I feel like they would have run with it these days, but back then, maybe not so. According to Nicole Strickland in her book, Spirited Queen Mary, still have not picked this one up, but I need to. Making a mental note. The legend of B340 was invented in the late 80s or early 90s by employees of Walt Disney Company, which owned the hotel at the time. Weird. A few cast members wanted to scare guests who were asking about one of the yet unfinished rooms that was unavailable for booking because of construction. And so the legend was born. So was the rooms just being demolished and under construction because they thought they were smaller and wanted to create a bigger room for guests? Then someone says, oh, I heard it was haunted, and then they just ran with it. Allegedly, this is what Nicole Strickland thinks. If the tales are true, though, it is thought that the energy would charge the room to cause manifestation of the spirits, and that is now haunted because it's been so manifested because of all these reports that now all of these things are adding up. The covers being ripped off of people, the figures, the running water, the lights going on and off, the phones ringing with nobody on the other line, footsteps, the knocks, all of it. And for the first time in the 80s, the room was finally open for check-ins and could still barely hold anyone because everyone ran out terrified. There has to be some type of haunting going on there, whether it is those stories or just the fact of all of the other deaths, the war, all of the unfortunate things that have happened on the ship, and then the manifestations going on with it. I think it's just a big, honestly, paranormal cesspool going on over there. In the first week of the room being open, there was 40 bookings, so it's popular. And I feel like it probably still very much is. I feel like if I was ever in the area, I would want to stay there, so I get it. It's been entirely redone and is open to guests, and aside from it being haunted, it is just a beautiful redone room on the Queen Mary. Space is warm and comforting. It has modern furniture. Some guests have said it's hard to imagine being scared in that room because it's so nice. Besides the sightings that I talked about in the intro of this video, there has been many more, and you can see people's own experiences on YouTube going to the Queen Mary. You can look up tons of different blog posts and things about other people's experiences. I feel like so many people experience different things. Some don't notice anything at all and just have a good time on this vintage old ship, while others really feel the presence of something. Some of them catch noises and sounds while editing their videos that they didn't even catch while they were actually on the ship, which I just feel like is so spooky. That's happened to me before, not at a haunted place, but I swear before I was filming one of these episodes for my other podcast, and I swear I could hear a voice say something to me whenever I was like editing it back. It was so creepy. So I can only imagine like getting home to edit your footage from like the Queen Mary and getting something like that. Then there's of course the floating orbs that so many people get in their photos, and a lot believe are spirits or beings on the other side that are showing themselves to them and are getting captured on photo. Today, the Queen Mary is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Provides not only a wide range of guest rooms for travelers, but also 14 Art Deco salons, tours, restaurants, shops, and exhibits. They also provide tours, like night tours, where you get to actually go down in like the engine room, see the infamous Door 13. Staff will talk about weird paranormal things that have happened to them or to others, and how there was actually deaths from sicknesses and illnesses. That's why the hospital wing is a little bit more of a spooky area on the ship these days. People say they hear a lot of moving around and footsteps when they are alone in these areas. Even the decks are supposed to be super creepy. They still have the same wood that has always been on the decks. And there's different decks outside on the ship. People have seen figures, heard kids laughing and running, all kinds of really spooky things. It seems that even in retirement, the Queen Mary has never been more popular. Over the years, the ship has carried somewhere around 2.2 million passengers in her days of actually transportation, 810,000 military personnel in the Second World War. But in Long Beach, an estimated 50 million people have visited. That is just insane. A well-known English psychic, Mabel Fortescue Harrison, predicted, she quoted, "The Queen Mary will know her greatest fame and popularity when she never sells another mile or carries another fare-paying passenger." That's just insane. Because it is. It is a legendary ship for her days of sailing, but now for the paranormal and hauntings and people who love the spooky shit. There is a full documentary, if you guys are into that. You history buffs out there looking for something to learn even more about the Queen Mary. I personally don't watch too many history docu-series, but this one was super interesting to me. But it is over on Titanic and Historical Films by Mark on YouTube, and I just found it really interesting. There's a lot of footage of like the Queen Mary, not really a lot of the spooky elements, but you guys are getting that here. Shows her in all of her glory, even her last sail. So now I have to know, would you ever book room B340? I think the idea of staying on a legendary ship like that would just be so cool in general. I'm not much for cruises. I have literally the fear of somebody gutting me and throwing me over the side. But I think it would be so cool to still be able to experience being on a ship. I don't know, there's just something about being stuck in time and being able to be on something so old like that that I just think it'd be so much more interesting, so much more fun, and more up my alley. You guys will have to let me know down in the comments. And I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. I had so much fun relearning about the Queen Mary and all of these spooky, gory details and bits. If I did not mention a story that you heard of on the Queen Mary, we'll have to share down below with the class. And thank you so much for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for next week's episode, and I'll see you then.